Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming to our session. It's really lovely to see you all here. This session is all about cultural training. It's a subject that we are all very passionate about, and we look forward to sharing some of our experiences, our insights, and hopefully giving you all things that you can take away to help you better understand and utilize cultural training within your businesses and your client relations. Just as brief introductions, my name is Lucy Foster. I am the Global Account Manager for Impact Group. We are specialist providers of spouse partner support and cross-cultural training globally. And my esteemed panel. Start with you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Ludovic Lemoine, based in France. I'm Managing Director of CIBT Newland Chase, France. Mainly, it's a large group, and I'm very happy. So thanks to Impact Group to invite me to this session. And very important session. I'm quite sensitive to this session also because I born in France, grown up in France. As you can see, I'm 100% French, but my origins are from India, Pondicherry, southeast of India, so an ex-French colony. This is why I'm wearing a French name. And I grown up on a bicultural environment, so 80% French, 20% Indian. So I'm happy to say today that eating with your fingers is more tasty than a fork. And that when you shake the head like that and you say yes, I mean, it's not no. So I'm happy to be there. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura. I'm from Move My Talent Relocation Services in Estonia, and we are an Estonian immigration and destination service provider. But for the last 10 years that I have been in global mobility and in this industry, actually the topic of culture has been very dear to my heart. So of my background before, I come from education, and I'm really excited to be here today and share our experience. So yes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Martin George, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called LTC Language Solutions. And so we do language and cultural training, and my studies, I'm a psycho-sociolinguist, but most people just call me a psycho.
Thanks, Martin. Hi, everyone. My name is Janice, and I am from EuRA Middle East. We provide destination services into the Middle East. We are based in Dubai, and actually, my background, I started as an internal mobility in an oil and gas company, and I also worked with, thereafter, I also worked with an RMC as a client account manager, and now I'm here working for the DSP in the Middle East. So pretty much a lot of stories probably that we can share today. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. So we were asked to put this panel today because cultural training is, of course, really important within the global mobility space. We all touch that space, and having that cultural awareness and cultural understanding is vital to help our assignees and our clients, and indeed our own teams, to be more productive, more successful, more engaged. And according to research done by Cartus, 61% of failed assignments happen because of family and personal reasons. And this can include the family's inability to settle and acclimatize to that new culture, for the assignee to not really feel that they're fully integrated and getting the most of it. And this is one of the reasons that this support is so important. I think there's two different types of culture. We can talk about corporate culture, which is just as important. No one organization, it might like to think it has a corporate culture, but an office in one location in Asia might be very different to the US's operation. So having that understanding is one side of it. And then thinking about culture just on that human and individual level, it's so important to who we are. It's intrinsic in us, in our identities. We each have a unique cultural lens, and that will determine our values, our beliefs, our relationships, our communication styles, our emotional responses. And this is why it's so important that we know, when we acknowledge, we recognize and understand those differences, and then we can adapt so that we can overcome problems, and we can work better together and as individuals as well. So without further ado, I think, I would like to think everybody in this room would acknowledge and understand, as we do in the panel, the importance of this topic. But when there are so many different moving parts of an assignment and so many conflicting priorities. Why should people be interested in cross-cultural training and these softer services, so-called, that we use? And why should our industry be perhaps reconsidering not only the delivery for assignees, but also for themselves within their own teams and relationships? And Martin, would you like to start?
Well, I think, first of all, thank you, Lucy. I think, first of all, on the EuRA website, one of the foundational points they have is intercultural understanding, social values, and information sharing are deeply ingrained in our DNA. So I think every one of us understand the value, but we don't always act on that value, do we? And we don't always put into practice sort of why we are doing this, why it's so important. And I think today we hear a lot about like ESG, how many people are working on ESG, sustainability, DE&I. I mean, we see and hear those things, very, very important. I believe that cultural understanding really goes to the I, DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. How can we include someone? We were just at a session before this, and they were dealing with an Asian country, and they said they had little to no understanding of that culture and the people. And so really to be able to include other people, really we have to know them. We have to know how they act, how they think, how they believe. And so I haven't heard DE&I, used in this way, but I think it's very important that we do value and see the importance. And obviously, if you take the D, diversity, so we are all very diverse. And I think here, and one thing someone told me very, very early in my career, just because you work like in a garage, maybe as a mechanic, doesn't make you a car. So just because we live in cultures and deal with people from other cultures, it doesn't mean that maybe we have the expertise. And that's why, a lot of people on this panel and you all have the expertise to be able to help other people succeed in what they're doing cross-culturally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Ludovic, I know that you were keen to...
Yeah, I'm working on global mobility for the last 17 years, and I've seen so many cases on relocation, immigration, visas, and many schooling and departure assistance. And what I would like to add is that, of course, intercultural is a very high topic and important topic we all have to take in consideration, because when you are sending families on assignments, not only the assignee, all the family on an assignment is going to a complete different country with a complete different culture. Local codes are completely different. Mm-hmm. So families, wives, kids, assignee have to be prepared to face these daily challenges on local code. And we can just add an example. We can say, like in India, I started that my presentation like a joke, but that's true also. In India, for example, they say yes, but saying no with the head gesture. So it can be amazing, but it's a daily local issue that families can have, which is in India. In Japan, for example, they are not using, no is not used, just to preserve social harmony and just to avoid any mistake on that and to show some respect. China, Singapore, Vietnam, Philippines also, the yes is very quickly used, but it's not really meaning yes. So it's really, how we have used very heavy and important words like complex, different local codes, social harmony, etc., just for yes and for no.
Yeah.
So you can imagine for the rest of the life of the assignee how complicated it can be in a local different country. And I will just end that, adding that on my previous company, to face such issues of communication between the global mobility consultant and the assignees, we just took the decision, for example, to create some teams, Brazil, China, India, Japan, with a specific Japanese girl, Japanese lady, Chinese guy, just to assist the different country of origin people who was coming to France. And that was a success. We failed. We had a lot of negative surveys before, and then we made our proper survey to identify where was a mistake and what we can do to better, to progress on that. It was just to hire the same cultured person, for a better communication and the same language.
And I think absolutely that you know, you said there was problems, and I think this is when you have these support services and you have this training in place, you can help prevent those problems before they even start. You know, don't wait till something goes wrong. We always say this to clients, we're happy to help you when things go wrong, but really, you know, call us beforehand. Laura?
And yeah, if I may add, so one of the, at least for me, what it has been really important to kind of teach our consultants, we all understand that, you know, it's the personality that affects someone's behavior. But for me, like this behavioral triangle, so we understand that it's the personality, and we also understand that it's the situation. You know, at work life, people behave one way, at home they're different. But very often we forget the third part of this triangle, which is culture. And if we don't acknowledge that culture might be a big player in how someone behaves, or big actor in how someone behaves, we might very wrongly judge them. So I think it's really important that all of our consultants are aware of this, this impact of culture.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's a human world, and we all have different human emotional responses and cultural responses, and understanding those will be a huge advantage for everybody. And I think I'm sometimes surprised about the number of people who work in the global mobility sector who've never had an international experience or never had that training and that level of awareness for themselves. So I think that's why it's so important that we can make sure that they have that information so that they can reach their clients and support their assignees better. So I think, you know, we definitely agree that it's such an important issue. The question that I get time and time again is, yeah, it's great, it's brilliant, we think it's brilliant, but how do we get buy-in? How do we demonstrate the ROI of this service? And I think all of the so-called softer services are really hard to put a figure on. But Laura, I know that you've done quite a lot of work around this. Do you want to share how you do it?
Yes, well, I think one way we can all approach our clients to let them understand about the importance of cultural training is first that they would acknowledge what does it mean to have a culturally diverse organization. So we have research that actually shows two different directions. We have research that shows that culturally diverse teams are more creative, are more innovative, that there's higher earnings before taxes compared to industry average. So this is studies from different scientific studies, studies by McKinsey. So we see that there's huge potential. Some studies show that it's even 35% more of profitability in culturally diverse organizations. But now, on the other hand, there's also research that shows the potential risks and the kind of issues that come along with it. So there's miscommunication, misunderstanding, conflicts coming from different communication patterns. One study in International Human of HR Management indicated that 67% of people in multinational organizations have encountered conflicts that come from cultural misunderstandings and communication. So 67%, that's a lot of problem. So we see that there's this one way of huge potential and the other way of things going wrong. So how can we mitigate those risks and kind of remove going wrong? It's through cultural training. So I'm really happy to see that there's growing interest in raising the intercultural awareness in the entire organization. But then we also have to look at the individual's level. So that's another thing, not just, you know, just the organization, but the individuals. And there as well, we have a lot of proof that shows that cultural training supports higher quicker adjustment and also higher productivity in their role that they kind of came for. So here we see that there's actual impact. And in 2016, I did my research, my master's research in Estonia on how do different adjustment services, how do they correlate with socio-cultural adjustment. And it was actually surprising that it's the softer services that more contribute to people's adjustment. We all think about the tangible things, you know, the residence permit card in your hand, but actually this is how we reduce the risk of the assignment going wrong. So there is a lot of proof that if we do provide training, but here we have to also be conscious that, you know, one size fits all training doesn't suit everyone. We always have, as training providers, how we kind of raise the added value is we start from looking at what is the problem, what is the goal of the training, then we solve it, and that's, you know, doing a personalized training, that's how we get to this profitability, innovation, and creativity.
Absolutely. I think everybody's circumstances are different. Every client need is different. Every individual's, you might have on an individual level someone who's moved 4 or 5 times, or it could be their first assignment. They still need cultural training when they're moving into a new culture, but it might be a different level in adapting it for them or for their individual needs, or the client needs, the group needs, whichever is the key to that successful imparting of the information that they need. I know, Janice, you've got some case studies around this.
Yeah, I mean, like taking off from Laura, in terms of like data, majority of those moves that I've seen that were not successful is actually they were not successful integrating into the workplace and into the community. And I think taking away from like just talking about concepts, I'd like to probably share with you one of the things that I've seen. So there's this one case that we were managing, and it was during the time of Ramadan, and he was in an apartment with his family. And what happened was, in the early morning, I'm not sure if you're all aware about how Ramadan works, but everybody's just fasting when the sun is up. So then what they have to do is they'll have to have their meals when the sun is down, so before the sunrise and when the sun sets. So in the morning, of course, a lot of families, if you are in a mostly Muslim country, whether in Asia or in the Middle East, then you're going to be hearing a lot of noises like very early in the morning. And then we have this assignee who's like in a mid-level floor who would be like, why are they eating this early? And like, it did not stop there. The family had to go up and knock on, the door and say like, stop eating and all that. So it's not about like wanting them to be more cautious about the noise, but it's really understanding the culture that you are in that scenario. So what happens in those cases is like you'll have to assist them to definitely move somewhere else, because there's going to be noise around that situation, not just for the family that they're trying to barge in, but also in the building, and it creates like, noise in the community that they have this someone in their neighborhood that's, causing all this. And so then we will have to look for another house. And what I'm trying to say here is it's not just about the cost savings here, but it's really the cost avoidance that we're trying to avoid, because it's going to be a massive cost again to move another family, and then you'll have to do that. But how that ended, that story had ended, is that after moving to a new place, it happened again. And it's for the same reason. So not having that part of the cultural training integrated into the family as while they are moving is just very difficult for the organization to take, because then midway that assignment, they will have to move the family back, which means that you have a very disengaged employee and you have a project that is half done in the location. So it's more costly to really deal with that, and imagine doing that for a group move, for example. So right now we're assisting some companies who are moving their headquarters to another location because, again, they were not successful in the location that they were trying to move the employees, and that's what we're trying to do and change in our program, so that at least we can incorporate some of those culture training around that. So, yeah.
And I think something as well that occurred to me when you were speaking then is thinking about the ROI and the loss of talent. We know that global mobility and having that international experience is a key driver for that, and having that talent development and that talent retention. So if you're not giving people the opportunity to move, you risk losing that talent. If you're giving them the opportunity but not giving them the opportunity to do it to the very best of their ability and get the absolute most of that assignment, then ultimately it's the organization that's going to lose, potentially losing that, not only the cost of the physical location, but potentially that high potential individual as well. So it's a double edge, it hits at all ways. Would anyone else like to add anything on that?
Yeah, I think, also I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, we really have to define culture in terms of ROI, because we all have a culture, whether we grew up in Manhattan, Kansas, or Manhattan, New York. And I think, unfortunately, in the States, we often measure it by lawsuits. And so, we have things like gender and affirmative action, and we work with a lot of automotive companies. And in the automotive industry, it was very, very male-driven, and females were not paid the same or treated the same. And then when you had overseas companies come in to the United States and they brought their culture, I mean, it was actually decided that cultural understanding was important in an ROI by how many dollars, millions of dollars, they spent on sexual harassment lawsuits.
Wow.
And so, you know, we really do see this misunderstanding, you know, not just, it's not for the faint at heart. It's not just, oh, this is nice, this is cute, this is something we need to do, and we need to help somebody kiss, bow, and shake hands. That's great, that's first page. But you go further in the book, you go chapters down, it's very, very serious, and it can be very, very offensive how we look at each other, treat each other, support each other, promote each other, pay each other. And we all have cultural norms, don't we, in terms of what we believe, what we think, how we feel. And if we do not have that training, we're acting on the culture and the beliefs that where we came from, and we're just going along. And the ROI sometimes, unfortunately, you know, a pound of prevention, you know, is what they say.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're trying to get healthier way up here before we have to, you know, have an open heart surgery or, you know, take diabetic medicine. So I really believe the cost of doing a cultural training, I mean, it is pennies compared to the hundreds of millions of dollars that people are spending. I spent 8 years in China, 9 if you count Taiwan, but we won't get into that. We'll let the UN and others decide where that falls.
That's another panel.
That's right. This is another panel. That's after. But, you know, I have seen a lot, and I think we have to just define it.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay. So I think we can't have a panel about cross-cultural training and not talk about communication. How we communicate is just so important. We do it in so many different ways, with, you know, verbal, with our body languages, different spoken languages. And I think it's such a key importance. Just a silly example of misunderstandings is I was in the States recently in our corporate head office, and we'd had a day in the office, a really productive day. We were going out for dinner, and I went to my colleague and said, "Oh, can I just chuck my bag in your boot?" And he just went, "Pardon, what?" And he didn't, you know, he didn't. I said, "Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. Do you mind if I put my bag in the trunk of your car?" He's like, "Oh, what did he say?" And we had this whole conversation on the way to the restaurant about, you know, two nations divided by the common language and the differences of it. And I think one of our favorite cultural training slides is the one many have already seen it, is, you know, what an English person might say and then what we mean and then what you might hear if you're not from that country. And I think there's some very funny examples, but underlying it is a really serious issue. It's not understanding each other can have really serious consequences for the success of an assignment and for the individuals and for all of us working in the globally mobile space. Even EuRA, having that understanding of how we communicate with each other will make our meetings more successful, definitely. So, Ludovic, how have you seen that communication impact on your businesses and your clients and, you know, the experiences that you've had? I know you've mentioned some of them already with like the no and the yes, but tell us more.
Yeah, the impact on business for me, and you all be agree on that, is very, very high and can conduct an assistant we can give to an assignee to a complete failure. Definitely, because if we have not been prepared, well prepared, we have not anticipated, not adapt the communication, and you are not ready and to assist and to accept also, it's a kind of psychological thing, but if you don't accept also the difference of the assignee, that it's completely different. I mean, it can be a failure because you have a low context culture and you have a high context culture. Maybe you can think that you are living in a low context culture because you are French and you are assisting an Indian guy, for example, and for you it's a high context culture and it's very complex for you, but it's the same for him also. So you have to, to play and to jump and to read between the lines to adapt your communication and to avoid any failure on that. Cultural training, of course, and language. But I can give you some examples I personally experimented during the 17 years. We have gone for 10 days home search assistant for an assignee. my ex-colleague is in the room, she will remember this story. And we went through, and it was a complete failure. We don't understand why. At the end, I spoke to this guy because he was coming from India, speaking the same language, speaking in Tamil with a French accent. So he was very happy to speak to me, very comfortable. He was very, and immediately in the second, say, oh, you know, Ludwig, how can I will avoid the accent, but how can I, in case the elevator is not working, how can I wear to my apartment on a monthly basis a 20 kilogram pack of rice? This was his concern, you know. And as 20% Indian, again, I can fully understand he was concerned that he was a big family, 5-person family. I mean, rice in India, in many countries, Asia, mainly in Asia, it's the main dish. So it was very important for him to find. So we have been saved time if since the beginning we just anticipating, and he was maybe an Indian guy in front of him, he would be more comfortable to share, I mean, for what he was concerned. So perception. I also had, I was shocked about that sometimes, because we had a very loyal employee. She was working very well, and suddenly she came to my office and she gave her resign letter. I was shocked because for 4 years, she was very quiet, delivering excellent services to the biggest client also, and she was just leading the Japanese team and doing meetings with the clients, etc. And she told me what, you know, she said, okay, Ludwig, I'm working in the company during 4 years, and you never increase my salary. I said, okay, come on, you are in France. I mean, if you never ask, you never get. I mean, it's like that. Yeah, but in Japan, if the employer find that the employee is working very good, automatically, every year or more, they just increase the salary as a recognition of the work which has been done. So, okay, but it was too late. Again, it was too late. A French guy, you can negotiate, but in that case, it was not the case. And today, I'm working since more or less 2 years in the group at CIBT in Chase, which is an immigration and visa assistant company. Recently, we had a family coming from Africa to France. They were just like hurrying up and saying that we want to come to Paris, to France in 15 days. But we started the communication 1 month before, and sending all papers to get their work authorization, residence permit, etc., etc. So, and then he said, oh, I need to be there in 15 days. I don't care how we will do, but you have to do. So we have to explain to him that it was completely not possible. He said, oh, you know, in my country, we can just pay and accelerate the process. So we had to start again and explain to him that it was not possible, and you enter on the thing on compliant, non-compliant for you, but non-compliant, compliant for a different country. So we also have to, it's gymnastic, yeah, of course. We have to jump to one culture, to another culture, to better answer, to anticipate, to avoid. And in that case, this is why training for specific cultures, from my point of view, for specific, and when there is a volume, of course, can't get many trainings, but and same people putting in face of the assignee or whatever people, Indian to another Indian, Chinese to another Chinese, Japanese, etc. You will save time for me. You save time, you save money, we save a lot of frustrations on both sides, and the communication is crystal clear.
Yeah.
So that's it. Yeah.
And I think when the frustrations start, that's when the problems start, and then you end up down that spiral that you want to try to avoid. And Martin, thinking about language specifically and what you do, I think one of the things that you raised, which I really loved, was the concept of thrival communication. Do you want to expand on that?
Sure, and I think one of the interesting things is Major League Baseball came to us about 15 years ago, and they said, you know, we need our players to be able to talk to their coaches, they need to be able to talk to each other, they need to be able to talk to the sponsors, the people who pay their bill. Anyone know who Shohei Ohtani is? Only a few? Well, we were his no, just kidding. Just kidding. If you don't know, he signed a $700 million contract in the offseason with the LA Dodgers, and the interpreter stole about $10 to $15 million from him by he managed his money, he managed his salary, he managed everything he did. And so I think in terms of we changed it from survival to thrival, because we don't want people to just survive, do we? We want them to thrive. And so, culture and language go together. We know this. And, Major League Baseball said, come and help, just teach them some survival language. Just to teach them some things so if they, twist their ankle, they understand that they're going to get taped up and, communication. Well, it's not the same just getting taped up in every culture, because, you had Japanese players, you had Korean players, you had Taiwanese players, you had Dominican, Cuba, Venezuela. You had so many. Some people you're not touching. And so you had to have that communication, you had to have the culture, you had to integrate. And so for the players really to thrive, right now in Major League Baseball, 42% of the players are non-native English speakers. Basketball, it's about 30%. I mean, hockey, I think it's 99%. So I think for us to be able to thrive, Abraham Lincoln said, to understand language is important, but to understand culture is even more important, because if somebody thinks you're a fool, open your mouth and then you'll convince them if you don't know their culture. So we don't want to convince anyone that we are being foolish, but we want to help people thrive, don't we? We want to help people succeed. We want to help them get ahead. We don't want, again, just to get where they're going and sort of, we hope you do well. We hope your assignment goes well. We want them to really thrive.
I think the other thing is we obviously don't just communicate verbally, we communicate with our body language and something. And Janice, I know from my experience when I lived in the UAE and Dubai, body language can be a significant challenge. I mean, tell us about some
It can
things that
be
could go
different there actually, because I don't know how it is also in Asia and also in the Middle East. Like if you say something about like saying yes, or what they call inshallah, some other cultures might take it like, oh, she's gonna do it. But the truth is it's called like it's God willing. I mean, it will happen if it will happen. Yeah. So it's kind of like when you're dealing with customers who are expecting something to happen when they should happen, and the culture just doesn't say that way, then there's going to be a disconnect on how we deliver our services and how they integrate and all that. And it's not only that, actually, it's more of like, in some, if in opposing cultures, if I may, like Asia, for example, and probably in the West, there could be like language-wise, there are like the way we construct our sentences will be very different for the way the others would construct their sentences. Like, say, for example, in the Southeast Asia, where when they speak, they usually do not put like a subject and a linking verb. So then it may sound to us like, are you mad now? You're asking me like, right or wrong? I mean, that's just how they convert it into English. But for us, we would say, is this correct or is this not correct? But for them, they would say it like in just plain action words, which is very friendly to their ears, but for us, probably not. So then, again, there's that disconnect with language and culture intertwined with each other, really. So, yeah, interesting.
If I may add from my personal experience as well, I think my first experience with differences in communication was before I entered the mobility industry. It was traveling in Malaysia and looking for a bus station, and it was before smartphones even, so backpacking around the world. And I remember looking for this bus station and being guided to one place, which was not the right place, and then to the other. It was also not the right place. So we were guided to 3 different places. Luckily found the bus station in the end, but it was only a lot later that I realized that it's impolite to say no. So I think we all, what Ludovic, you said as well, it's of course good to match people who are coming from a similar culture, but we cannot always, allow that in our companies. So some of our teams are small, so you can't always provide a professional from that culture, but whenever in doubt, double check and reflect. And I think this is, conscious listening, active listening, and reflecting on what you understand, and that already takes a lot of those miscommunications down.
And I think that's a lot easier to do in person than it is virtually. So, we're now in this tech virtual world, we're all on Teams and Zooms and whatever. How do you feel that, what are the ways that we can help improve that communication? And also critically, in your experiences of your own cultures, what are the pitfalls that we should be looking for that can really cause those problems and the major challenges?
Well, I think, again, I think you have to look at the semantic domain in terms of, what did you try to mean by the words you said, culturally, linguistically, and then you have to look at the syntactical structure, as you said, and so I think when you're doing something on Teams, and in the United States, we speak 5 to 7 syllables per second, but our friends in many Spanish-speaking countries, they speak 7 to 9. And so when you have electronic communication and somebody's speaking 9 syllables in a second, and somebody's used to 5 syllables a second, we have to be very aware that this can be very difficult for someone to understand, process the language, even if they have a background in language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think also the pitfall of when you're on a screen is that, you only see that face, you can miss some of those other cues that you would in a meeting, particularly, somebody's not engaged particularly, they can sit there and almost hide and not say anything. And in different cultures, in fact, that's what they would do in a meeting, but virtually it's very hard, I think, for team leaders and managers to, if they don't have that cultural awareness, then they might miss something and that person could be struggling or having those challenges. So that's why I think, again, it's even more important, even if people aren't physically moving, if they're having that interface across the world, even virtually, then to have those communications.
My nephew actually got fired over Zoom for being culturally inappropriate because of just the body language on Zoom. So again, culture can become very, very important. Even, communication, we think, oh, nobody's gonna see us, nobody's gonna hear us, nobody's gonna, understand or parse what we're doing. That's not the case.
No, he wasn't the guy that got caught naked during COVID, was he?
No.
Okay, good.
Cannot say.
Okay.
No, of course not.
But again, it just does highlight the pitfalls and the problems that can arise. Okay. So thinking about cultural training over the years, it's been around a long, long time. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think if anything, there seems to be more increasing conversations about it and the importance of it. And, it has evolved. It's come a long way from that kind of information dump in a classroom 6 weeks before the assignment where, yes, you're imparting information, but also that assignee has a million other things going on in their head and it's kind of in one ear and out the other. And then they get there and they're like, oh, hang on, what was I supposed to do in this situation? So, we're using technology more, and certainly we have, in an ongoing coaching style now of doing our cultural training, which means they can help prepare for the move, but have that real-time assistance on the ground when they need it. We've got many different platforms available to assignees, self-directed learning as well, which is a good for the very, very budget conscious. There's different ways of doing it. But for you guys, how do you see the future of this service within our industry, and how can we as professionals be better promoting it? Janice?
I think let's go back traditionally on how do you get your assignees or your employees to be on expatriate assignment, right? So the first things that you look at is what would be the package that we provided. So looking back 15, maybe 20 years back, cultural training is always a major component there. And you could imagine that back then there was no technology. We're not as globalized as we are now. So it was very essential to have that. And later on, as we moved and progressed to being digital and everything, you see online, you have information out there. There's so many who are traveling and sharing stories online, which you can always go and see. A lot of companies, when cost-cutting initiatives are being put out, it's always cultural training that's the first target to be taken out. So then that's how you would see packages around clients now, where cultural training now is like a core flex. It's part of the flex where you can just opt for it or maybe not. So that's how it's evolved and how we're using it. But the truth is, cultural training should always be there, and there's always a way on how we can incorporate that. Of course, it's already mentioned how you can do that digitally now. And I think what we need to start looking also is in the programs that we are providing, regardless of what services you're offering to your employees, work with experts like cultural awareness experts and incorporate them into and work with them on how you can incorporate those solutions for clients who are, of course, we cannot deny that cost is very important. So we always have to address that, but it's also very important that we have to let them know how critical it is still to have that, because I mean, I've lived in 3 different cities, and not to see everything online is going to be true, unfortunately. And living in the city is different from reading it from online as well. So it's very important. And what we're trying to do now in Dubai is like we incorporate a bit of cultural, like maybe 20-25% of our home search and orientation program incorporates a little bit of what they need to know as they integrate and settle into the location. Like, for example, when we start, and you can see that, for example, in Asia, like when you're viewing housing, for example, you have to take your shoes off before you enter, the house and all that. So you incorporate that every step of the way. Unlike before, traditionally, you just let the cultural training team do it and say like, oh, this is your package, you're gonna get this benefit, somebody's gonna pay your allowance, and then somebody's gonna contact you for what you need to know about the location. But now everybody's just thinking like, oh, you can just see it online, ask your colleagues. Your colleagues may have different background or preferences or understanding as well. And you might just be getting the worst advice ever if you ever do that. So I think it's a matter of like us as providers and looking after our clients, we really have to look into how can we adapt with this changing, environment of our clients as well. Yes.
If I may add, I think it depends on the market as well. I mean, in Estonia, this kind of global mobility is relatively new.
Yeah.
So I'm actually really excited to see that while the number of cultural training to individual assignments is going down a little bit, there's more readiness from HRs to train the entire organization. And I think with having so much information online, like with the technology right now, I think we have to also think, what is the value that we bring in? So we don't have to provide the knowledge, the country-specific knowledge. This is something that people can find out themselves or that companies can put together, but it's the experiential part of learning, and that is something where we bring in a lot of value. So choosing methods and bringing people together. And even with technology, I mean, you can be cost saving. So I just a little while ago had an intercultural training for the HR managers of a big manufacturing company, with some HRs logging in from the United States. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, and some logging in from India. And of course, we could have done just, me presenting something, recording, and they all watch it at their own time. But having them share their perspectives together, see, okay, so this is how I would react in this situation, and that's how you would. Okay, so I think this experiential part of learning is where we bring the most value and what we have to keep for us to provide.
And that's very good, because I think for the company who's deciding whether to put it in the package or the individual who's deciding to engage in it, we have to differentiate. Is it just a basic like do's and don'ts, or is it ongoing? As you said, you have, pre-departure and then on site. And so if it's just do's and don'ts, they can get it. They can go out and read the do's and don't do this and don't do this. But again, we're in chapter 1. So if a company sets to help their employees be successful, they do a lot of training around a lot of topics in a lot of areas. And so it should be ongoing, it should be engaging, it should be experiential, it should be helping the people navigate, not only the employee, but the spouse and the children.
Absolutely. I think the exciting thing for us as well in our business is we're starting to see more HR teams asking for that help for their specific teams. We're also starting to see inquiries from DSPs and RMCs in specific locations. We recently just did a training for an organisation that's got a group move coming into the UK from Saudi Arabia. And they already know that the budget is quite small for these moves, and that they know they're going to have to manage those expectations. They are expecting escalations, they're expecting complaints, and they just wanted to understand how they could better deal with those so that they didn't get out of hand and preempt some of those issues, and just know how to communicate and work with them effectively. So I think there are so many ways that we can apply the training and meet the needs where they are, wherever they are in the world, and that's going to be different for everybody. Ludovic, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic because I had a reflection on internally within CIBT Newland Chase because it's a big group, as some of you know. It's more than 1,200 employees all around the world, so you have all the cultures, all the different expectations you can have, etc. And I experienced, I joined CIBT 2 years ago, and experienced many things because, and again, thanks maybe, as I'm quite sensitive to these cultural aspects, so I had to reflect, some reflection on that, and it seems like, there is two main difference you can have. I mean, you have to, as a manager for me, for example, you have to adapt your communication on a daily basis. We are on the era of Teams. I mean, let's do Zoom, let's do Teams. It's finished now. You are not going to the country to make, to be prepared to a lot of travels and to go to India, China to make, a lot of business meetings, etc. It's Zoom or Teams meeting a lot. But even that, what I've seen is the complete the timing, when you speak about timing, is completely different. You put a 10-minute appointment and nobody is on time, or they are finishing your breakfast online in front of you, which is completely not acceptable for a French one. And it's not completely, the dress, the hair is not completely finished. And, it's kind of baby is here also because they are feeding the baby is here. And for you, it's completely, and it's, am I working within this group?
And dogs, don't forget dogs.
Dogs,
Yeah,
of course.
I'm guilty of that one. I have a dog.
Yeah, we have one who has 20 dogs, maybe.
20?
Yeah,
Okay.
20 or more than that, because he has a kind of, it's a French bulldogs. So, and we have them and the story of this one, and they're finishing the story, oh, sorry, my daughter is sleeping, sorry this, sorry that. So, and you are like that and saying, okay, you are in 100% intercultural, environment, so you have to adapt your communication. Even within the team today in France, I'd say in the France office, sorry, you have maybe only 2 real French-born people. All the others are Russian, Ukraine, coming from China, Japan, countries from Africa, etc., but not born in France. So on the daily communication, I am sensitive to that, so I can adapt and try to adapt the communication. You shape the communication, or you speak to a Russian lady, so you have to say different, oh, this is an Indian guy, so you have to, again, say it differently. But for someone who is, let's say, 100% French, never travel, never know about nothing about intercultural, what is intercultural language, etc., it can be a daily, it can be failure. Management process can be a complete failure. So it's very, very important for me, so to better and clear understanding, better comprehension, and also to understand the actions taken by the group. We are sit for me in France, Paris, Champs-Élysées, nice place, etc. But sometimes I'm just like, why did they took this decision? It's a pure American decision. It's not, you can adapt that decision to France because the rules do not permit you to take this kind of decision. So, okay, so get back to them, you explain them, hey guys, in France, oh, you French guys always bringing something, etc. But that's great because there is communication. When there is communication, for me, communication is key of success. Always saying that, and that's true. And just don't be afraid to communicate and then to bring something, and I think then it can be a success. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that sums it up nicely, actually, communication and collaboration. I think that's the way forward. Thank you all so much. Before we finish, does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to ask us? Louise, Peggy has a microphone.
From this morning's discussion with the keynote speaker about AI, and we've got to look for the future, where do you think cultural training is going to be? Because do you think that you're going to have to be one step ahead and think that you're going to have AI and coach it to do the cultural training with all this kind of voice recognition and having emotion put in it? Or do you think cultural training is going to still be done by a human? I mean, I absolutely 100% believe in the human interaction of cultural training, but we've got to now think one step ahead.
I'm probably not the person to ask about this because I was one of the 12% that's never used AI. And I firmly believe in the culture, but I do believe that we have to adapt. But anyone would
Yeah,
like
I
to
think,
take
well,
that?
the question is, do you want to train the people to interact with the culture of country X, or do you want them to interact with AI? So, but no.
To deliver the
yes,
training.
to deliver the training.
It's about, you know, we've all got to think ahead now and collaborate together. And, you know, is AI now going to take over and you program it to do the cultural training?
I think it's always going to depend on the decision makers, you know, and their background. So if the decision maker is very highly technical and believes that's the way to go, I think you will see. I think, again, we heard a couple of sessions, it will take over parts of every industry, and it will take over parts of everything we do to a certain extent. But you have to decide, you have to see who's making those decisions, and are we being inclusive? Yeah, we're dealing with people.
Yeah, but I want to say that AI is actually a great tool to use when preparing because it helps you do research so much easier. Let's say you want to research what are the most important fairy tales in country X, and, you know, to Google it, just to understand the values in the culture, right? So, you know, you get the answers there, and then you go and dig deeper, or you want to find out something about, you know, a case study. So you can help AI to kind of give you hints, and then you go and you work with the material. So it can be a tool to use already now.
But I have to say that in terms of cultural training, there will always be a human factor to that, regardless of where we are in the future. And also because, like, if you're helping someone to integrate into the workforce and be successful in working with Arabs, for example, or with Asians, I don't think AI can do that in the near future. And the reason also because things change in a workforce, and you're never going to catch that technology-wise. And it's the same thing when you're integrating into the society. Every community might be different, and 2 years from now, that community might change again. So there's going to be always, like, in expertise that we do, there's going to be human factor for sure. Yeah.
Any questions? Thank you, Peggy.
Hi. I would like to know maybe if you can suggest some questions that maybe we can do, because, for example, myself, I'm coming from a small firm, so we don't know a lot about this issue. So I would like to know maybe what are going to be the first things that you can ask to expat or a process that you are starting when you are a small company and you don't have maybe a lot of money or resources to address this issue. Thank you.
So do you mean to get it implemented and to use it, or to...
There are cultural needs analysis, you know, so you can even do cultural inventories that would state, like, how ready is this person for an overseas assignment? And then something else, I think, to your point, would be like, before someone's going, is this for work? Is it for pleasure? You know, what's their background? What's their interest? Would they participate? So it's a cross-cultural sort of needs analysis.
Yeah, we use a questionnaire that's quite good for that as well, to see, you know, particularly the location that they're going into. You know, are there any major glaring differences? Is this going to be a really bad cultural fit, or, you know, how can we mitigate that? So there are tools that you can use that can give you that information. And I think if you're just thinking about questions that you want to ask people, the biggest one, I guess, is what are you concerned about? What are your biggest fears? And that can unlock a whole different thing about someone's perception of that company or that country and what they might expect. And then you can kind of work around that. So there are ways of doing cultural training, as we said, without having that big budget. I think the important thing is just to have that awareness that you do need to be talking about it and preparing people as best as possible.
But maybe what I would add, what is very simple and practical, yet very eye-opening, is just to have a discussion about values. What are the values that you are carrying? What are the values that are most important in your culture of origin? And then the introduction of what is considered important in the location where you're coming. And this is something that you can actually have just a human-to-human discussion when you're driving to the migration office or going on a home like viewing trip. So you can just integrate small things that are opening, the perspective of the assignee into your other tasks.
Yeah, and it's important as well thinking about the DE&I element to that as well. If you've got women moving into certain cultures, if you've got people from different backgrounds going into different cultures, how easy is it going to be for them to assimilate and have those questions, frame them in the right way at the right stage so that you can give them the support and the advice that they need.
And I saw a brilliant article on LGBTQIA recently, so, looking at the DE&I and
Absolutely.
relocation, in different cultures and countries.
Yeah.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Just.
Yeah. Just? Okay.
Oh, yeah, kind of.
First of all, I want to say thank you. It was a really insightful conversation. I just wanted to make an observation that when we're looking at the assignee, also to consider the families. I work at an international school, and we find that sometimes the assignee has adjusted well, but the family hasn't. And, just taking into consideration the support that should be provided by companies, sadly not so much anymore, not only to the employee, but to their family members, and ensuring that everybody is having that smooth transition.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think the cultural training and the integration support goes hand in hand, and it's that, well, with all of these things, it's looking at the whole person and the whole family and the whole situation and what can we do to support them. And you're right, for the assignee, it's easy. They're going into the office, they've got their colleagues, they've got their peers, they've got the employees. For the spouse and the partner that's left at home with no network, no support, no nothing, it's incredibly hard. And arguably, their need for the training is just as important culturally, and also, for them, for their own careers and what they want to do, take up the assignment, take responsibility and control for their own experience as well. So, yeah, we love doing all of those services. They are so important.
If I may add on this, so we have the experience in Estonia of collaborating with the state and providing a career program for expat spouses. So it's wonderful. The state is actually financing this, and the results are incredible. So the groups are small. There's a lot of focus on building connections and networking, but also kind of just empowering the participants and letting them know that they're not the only ones in such a situation. And this is one training where you can really measure the ROI. I mean, every euro that the state puts in, they get 8.5 back because so many people find jobs quite quickly. I'm happy to share our experience on this with you later.
That's
Absolutely. We're, affiliated with an organization called SPAN, and the work there is to support families in transition. So it'll be great to discuss further. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elena, Global Relocation Consultants, Middle East. The topic is very interesting and really resonates with me because as a business development, sometimes I just take assignments and go on the road with the assignees to make sure that the quality of service delivery is understandable, because I'm also managing this part. I mean, I love the discussion. I do believe in training. However, we know that before the arrival, the families or the assignees, they sometimes don't listen, sometimes don't believe. They have their prejudice against some points because they have the understanding already, the vision of what is going to happen and how it is going to work out. Whenever they come back, I mean, when they come to the location, I think it is already late because they start going through stress. So as a DSP, because I was the one who went through the cultural shock and went through all the stages of cultural adjustment in the Middle East, because for the last 17 years I have been living in Egypt. So I know what points I need to address during the orientation or home search or whatever. And I know, based on the personality of the person who I'm communicating with, what kind of challenges he's going to face in the workplace. So I've had like a lady. She was a top manager in one of the very big companies. She's still working, and we became very good friends. And from the start, I started telling her to pay attention to this, pay attention to that. However, she was still in resilience, and she ended up losing the whole department of 16 employees. And after that, she had to work like almost 5 months alone doing the full work of the department. But now, whenever we meet, because she trusts me, I told her that this was going to happen. I told her, please take care because of the culture, because of the characters, because they are very sensitive, because this and this and this. It happened. So now, whenever we meet, we always end up discussing all cultural aspects of her presence in the workplace. And she's asking me questions, and like, what am I going to do in this situation, in this situation? So my point is, it is great that there is something called cultural training, but it is also important, and is like, I feel that it works also better to have DSPs support the same cultural aspects, because this is like we are already on ground, and if we have relations, we become almost friends with the assignees, and if you have this trust, they will come back to you and they will ask you for solutions or maybe for some advice in the cultural aspects of their presence.
Yeah, totally agree with all of that.
Yep, good case study.
Yeah.
Hi, just one question. So your trainings are basically directed towards the employee adjusting to living in a new culture. Working in the relocation industry, so we do a home search in New York City. And I have agents who are working with people from all over the world all the time. Very different with somebody from France coming into New York than somebody coming in from the Middle East or from China. Are there trainings that are directed towards the service providers that can help them do a better job addressing the cultures?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as I mentioned, the case of the British, the UK-based company, you've got the team of Saudi Arabians coming in and having that cultural training. It's actually something that we are having more inquiries about, and I think there is this recognition to have that training. It just makes you better be able to look after your assignees and the support. So absolutely, the training, and I know it's not just my organisation that does this, is about everybody who touches that space, whatever the role is, whatever the responsibility. Absolutely, there is training available for small corporate teams, for DSPs, for RMCs, for whoever needs it, the signees, the families, the children. It's all available. Yeah.
And maybe to add to that, I think one of the famous ones in the industry would be cultural sensitivity. That's something that it's a training that you usually provide to your team if they're going in to manage a new region, for example, or location, just so they can understand that if this kind of population, this is how they speak, and these are their reservations and all that. It's more of like understanding and being sensitive about the culture that you're trying to help, and that will give them like all the resources they need to, operate and communicate well as well. So, yeah.
Any more? No? Brilliant. Well, thank you all so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure if you want to catch any of us at the drinks reception later, if you want to have any follow-up conversations or questions, we'd be happy to help.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.